all that, right? Like, what's the investment required to actually go to market over a multi-year period? So I think that's probably a huge one in itself too.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure you have a strategy call right now.
True.
So just on that topic,
Strategy never sleeps.
yeah, strategy never ends here at Goose Digital. Winged Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode 79. Who do we have?
Kevin Butler.
Michael
That's it.
Trixani. All right, that's it. That's all we have. We have a two-part, a two-way street here instead of a four-way street.
I think this is the first time we've done a two-party podcast.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to do more.
We've long talked about this.
Yeah, and we're going to add that to the mix because, frankly, we just don't get to talk enough when we're on the podcast.
I was going to say, they're easier to schedule.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah, right on. So we're talking strategy, using an agency to support your marketing strategy, right? We don't talk probably a ton about that sort of versus maybe the big picture of executing your program and sort of all that goes into that, which obviously we as an agency do that stuff as well, support the implementation of a program and the running of a program. But your area here, really a lot of that is more than just the strategy, but like you have that strategy services and that sort of P&L. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, what makes up a strategy, why, that's important, and when, using an agency might be kind of the right thing to do depending on your marketing organization.
And even exploring like the facets or the different areas of what strategy can mean. Because I think sometimes it's misconstrued or misunderstood. And there are times where we've spoken to clients and prospects where even that very word has been a bit off-putting as far as their organization's concerned. Well, that's my role, and I'm the one coming up with things. And I think there's different things a strategist, like an outside consultant, can do. That's very helpful to the whole process.
Yeah. So how do we think of? So when we think of strategy, that's a really good point, right? Because it's like we're not necessarily, although in some cases we do, like we're carrying a lot more of that overall strategy, marketing strategy. But I think a lot of what we're saying is there's a spectrum there. So you're saying, well, okay, when we are talking about strategy services, call it strategy support, right? What are we really talking about? Where I think what you're saying is a lot of times within a marketing organization, there may be one or two fairly senior marketers that have done it. Maybe one that's really done this multiple times. Now you get access to somebody that's, hey, guess what? Done it 250 times over for multiple organizations and is also a very senior strategist. So let's talk a little bit about what is the actual makeup of that strategy support.
Right. So I guess part one of this is the obvious one, would be coming up with the strategy. Like, what are we doing? Who are we talking to? What's the message? The output as far as marketing initiatives, marketing channels, marketing touches, things like that, email or paid media, whatever. And just conceiving what the whole plan looks like. That's sort of the obvious starting point. Some organizations have someone who can do that internally. Some already have a really well-baked plan, and others, we play a really crucial role in helping build that and unearth that based on what we know and what we learn from the organization. That's part one. I think part two would be guidance and support around this initiative campaign, whether it's a campaign for a quarter or a multi-year campaign. I think it's what are we trying to do, and sort of reasserting and overseeing the vision as to we set out to do this. How is that going, and helping explain to executives of our client organization the kind of progress and performance we're seeing. And I think that may split into a few different things. There's sort of the slightly tactical, which is a really senior person who says, I know what we need to do. I'm seeing these kinds of behaviors and trends. Here's how we're going to continue to address it. And I think the other part of that is for organizations who I'd say don't do as much marketing or don't have a whole lot of marketing background, it is helping them understand to set expectations up front, say this is what we expect to see. And then once we're live in the campaign or project, it's going to be about, okay, how are we trending relative to where we thought? And are we actually able to stay the course as to what we originally set out to do.
Are we seeing some early indicators of success or that type of thing?
Right, and then the third part is sort of this. It's definitely more relationship, and usually it's actually not with the client's marketing team. It's actually with their senior team, and it's around trying to set expectations as to what we're trying to do and hold them accountable to committing to what the plan was. You can call it strategy, you can call it whatever, but I have found in the past, sometimes you sit down with the executives of an organization and they want to and they intend to grow and they're willing to make the investment, but perhaps our expectations are not quite in line with what's actually going to happen. They want immediate growth, and while I would love to provide that, sometimes it doesn't happen. And sometimes the best intended plans have to change once we get out there in market and start doing these things and we learn a few things along the way. And I think some organizations will say, we're getting a bit nervous. There's some spend going on over a 4 to 6 week period, and we haven't seen a whole lot of pipeline creation or one-ops. And it takes a really senior marketer who's been there before, who's done that, to say, you have 5-month sales cycles. We were never going to close a deal inside of the first 4 weeks, but that's okay. And in absence of performance metrics like that, perhaps there's indicators to say, but this is what we're starting to see. And we long identified these are the kinds of behaviors and trends that would show us we're along the way and going. And there's a lot of times they play a role there, which is we said we were going to do this, we were committed to the plan, and now we're going to hold to that plan as best we can. And I get things change, but at the same time, it's important to see things through.
Yeah. So depending on how, vast your marketing organization is and the people that you have, that'll sort of dictate the type of strategy services or strategy support services that you might engage an agency like us for, right? If you have a couple of senior marketers, you've got some tactical execution. Well, that might just be to your point. Hey, you know what? There's somebody else on this side. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. We're helping compartmentalize that plan, that ultimate business marketing strategy that they have into something that is well-rounded from an execution perspective, right? And helping them kind of have a sounding board, somebody that's more, again, to your point, more senior at their level. Okay, we can see how all these components are going to come together, probably adding some value to flush out, because as an agency that deals with many clients and many projects, they won't have the same perspective as us. Even if they've done it multiple times over, we've probably done it many more times than they have. So just that ability to kind of flesh out a plan. And if you've got a smaller marketing org, or maybe depending on the size of your company, you're more traditional and you've traditional marketing versus digital, and you've got kind of more of a committee led, maybe even the president's involved or some high level sales resources, you may look for even more strategic support, really help us, to your point earlier, like help us determine how we might go about this based on our business. And arguably, you probably want that role internal. You want to have somebody inside the organization that can play that role more long-term, but certainly we can really lean into that and support the client to establish that strategy.
Yep. I think the other thing, there's sort of two angles to this, is when you're bringing in a third party or an outside consultant or a strategist, I do think there's a value in an objective perspective. Whether it's, I don't really have a horse in this race, or whether it's just a pair of fresh eyes. I haven't been bogged down with 2 to 3 years of in-company lingo, and I could read something and it's kind of ignorance is bliss, whereas I don't know the industry super well, but I say, I don't know what this means.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
this is industry jargon.
Yeah. And it's objective. It's fresh. And I do think there's a value there. Like certainly a high caliber strategist can read something, even if they're not an expert, and say, I understand the value prop. I know what you're getting at. This is a good message. That's what my expectation, I think. So that's part one. I think the other thing too about a strategist is sort of like a fit for purpose or subject matter expert. Like I was just in a conversation with actually another agency the other day, and what I find really interesting is this is a really strong agency with really senior people. They're smart, they're thoughtful, they're excellent at what they do. They're more of like a PR communications agency, and they wanted some help and guidance around marketing automation strategy. Big picture, but they're like, they could probably figure it out. But they're thinking, why do I need to do that when there's someone who's already a lot better at it so they can get to market quicker? There's years upon years of experience that I've got in that domain that they admit that they say, well, I don't have that. And so that there's a value there. They're all smart. They're great strategists. But they're
Right.
just like, we're not experts here. And we think we really need that.
And when you think of like even your own departments within your organization, I mean, you're going to have different seniority levels and different functional areas within marketing, right? You're going to have people that focus predominantly on creative design, or and as they get more senior and they've seen more things, obviously they can weigh in a little bit from the quote unquote creative strategy perspective. But you're going to have more junior, more senior, and different capabilities within your marketing org, and it's the same in our business. I mean, we've got senior strategist level resources that have been around and have been, quite senior in their careers and seen a lot. And they're the ones that are having these conversations. You also have the tactical, the more implementation resources. So when you engage an agency and you say, well, I need this, are you prepared to sort of lay it out in the perfect tactical execution format that then an automation resource and a design resource and maybe a paid resource can take that and with an account lead
Right.
kind of really leverage it? Or do you need support for, like you said, like if that PR communication agency decided to engage us and lay out a bunch of things on paper and we just were to hand that over to an account lead and say, go do it, it's probably not formatted or thought through, and to your point, could be done differently to be more efficient and effective if that strategist was involved with the client at the beginning. And that's what we're trying to do with this functional area, is really backstop a lot of the account management, a lot of the customer success, and not just before you get started, but also in life, every 6 months, kind of re-reviewing your strategy to ensure that it still fits your business needs.
Yeah, there's a word there I keep coming back to in what you're saying. It's around it's that vision, and more specifically the long-term vision. Because I think a lot of people who have been at an organization for a while, whether there is a direct marketing role or if it's sort of a role that has input within marketing function, they can say, well, these are the things we're going to do as part of a campaign, and it's probably pretty decent. I think though it's that long-term vision to say, where are we trying to go in the market? How well known are we? All the kinds of interesting sort of sub landscape points. But then it's like, well, what would we do after? If we're going to get a bunch of engaged leads, we're trying to, pick out the ones with immediate intent versus engagement, and we'll try to build and then requalify levels of intent. What do we do then? Well, like, where's that parking lot of future things we could do based on what we expect to learn or understand as part of the, part one of this campaign? I think that part gets missed a lot. The other thing I've been thinking about a bit is, and perhaps we're going to go and make some checklist or something. I think I'm signing us up for work. But it would be for organizations to say, how do you identify what kind of strategist you need, or what are the traits, experience, characteristics of a strategist? Because it kind of touches on what we were talking about before, which is, do you need someone who can go hold court, holding executives accountable and sort of re-explaining and regaining ongoing commitment for what we're trying to do? Or is it, I'm helping a pretty new marketing team really find their legs a bit quicker with a bit more structure?
Right.
What is it that the org really needs? Is it just another pair of senior eyes who's been there and done that? Just make sure things are on the rails, and we'll spend the money in advance so we don't waste a whole bunch later, or how much more, I should say. I think there's probably some sort of what strategist is right for you.
Yeah, I think we should get into that. I mean, I think I really see this as sort of like part one of I don't know how many parts, but I think we should come back and do.
Well, the consultant to me says we'll have to have a workshop to figure that out.
Yeah,
and
that's right. That's the strategist in you going. But I do think, I think there's two things. I think that a good topic would be to go through in a little bit more detail how to right size your strategy needs. To your point, that checklist, a way to sort of think about how you might go about subscribing to some strategy services. The other one would be just kind of how often should you be thinking about engaging a strategist versus your standard kind of agency services account team. And I think like we can kind of dig into that. I know you're working on more of a framework for companies to sort of look at, like, I think part of where you touched on with like, the leads and the pipeline components. I think part of what the strategist can do is help you install a framework. So it kind of starts with those early stage campaigns, right? But then it's well, what next? Mm-hmm. How do we actually think about our pipeline over the course? I mean, look what we do even for ourselves over the course of a 12, 24 month period. And you start to get into all kind of other areas around sales operations and marketing plus sales. So I think that could be like another part of this that we should sort of dig into, I think, and talk about.
I think there's another one too, probably further out around how do you look at your landscape, like your audience, the needs that they have? How do you position services and products around that? How do you interpret competitors or sort of indirect competitors, and how do you position yourself and all that, right? Like what's the investment required to actually go to market over a multi-year period? So I think that's probably a huge one in itself too.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure you have a strategy call right now.
True.
So just on that topic.
Strategy never sleeps.
Yeah, strategy never ends here at Goose Digital. So that was short and sweet, but I think it's going to add some value. It better. If it doesn't, then...
Well, it's a primer.
It's a primer. Yeah, we're wetting the whistle, as I like to say. Okay, so that's the strategy whistle wetner, and we'll see you next time.